Winning at Formula One, is it down to man or machine?
I think the driver is a crucial aspect of the team. He's certainly not more important than the car, though.
And 7,000 metres above the track, we're high-flying with the Arrows team. But first, the championship. The Arrows team arrived in Germany after almost making the points in Austria. A dramatic first lap in which Riccardo Zonta braked too late in his BAR and careered into the back of Michael Schumacher sent Jos back to the pits for repairs to his wing. He later retired with a loss of engine power. Pedro charged into fourth and then third place, the team's best of the season. But then a gearbox problem put him out of the race. In spite of the disappointment, the race proved that Arrows and the new A21 car are now becoming very competitive. The Hockenheim circuit in Germany is one of the fastest in Formula One. With 4 very long straights and thick woodland, the lap record for the 6.8-kilometre circuit is 1 minute 42 seconds, held by Riccardo Patrese at an average speed of 240 kilometres per hour.
I guess there's 2 things to say about Hockenheim. It's low downforce and big brakes. Very high speeds, looking at well over 200 mile an hour, with some big stops at the end of those straights, which puts a big premium on brakes. The circuit is so long that you can have rain up at the Os curve and it can be dry in the stadium. That makes it difficult to call on tyres.
From the starting grid, the Nord Tribune is taken at 190 kilometres per hour, leading drivers into the first of the 4 long straights. From 320, drivers brake hard to 80 for the Jim Clark curve, named after the driver who lost his life on the circuit. The next straight runs to Urs curve and then Ayrton Senna curve. Both hit at 80 after slowing from 320. A Geep is taken at 160 kilometres per hour and drivers brake to 80 for the Sachs hairpin. After Sud curve taken at 130, drivers hit the throttle again, back along the starting straight.
You basically set the car up for low downforce, able to run the curves in the chicanes and good traction coming out of the slow chicanes. If we get a good qualifying position, we should be able to race very well.
The residents of Baden-Württemberg, the sleepy little village near to the Hockenheim circuit, have enjoyed the German Grand Prix since 1977. The circuit has become the home of the race, and passionate German racing fans turn out in their thousands, largely to cheer on their national hero, Michael Schumacher. While Schumacher hopes for his second win at Hockenheim, the Arrows are hoping for their first. It's Friday practice and a chance to try out different race car setups. The A21 is fast on the straight and small flat wings increase the speed, but cornering stability suffers. The Arrows have to find a compromise.
It's a complete different circuit than all the others. I mean, it's very long straights and it's very critical on the braking. I think you need to have confidence in the brakes, and once you have that, I think you can do pretty well.
Data from previous laps, along with Yossi's impression of the car, are considered by race engineer Chris Dyer when working out the race car setups.
I think it's drying out. Yes, at the moment we'll leave the rear wing as it is. We go back to the smaller front wing, which will give you less front aero. We do a baseline run, then I want to try a soft rear bar.
Because the car has got very low wing, obviously to give us the high top speeds we need here, there's not a lot of downforce, so the aerodynamic force pushing the car onto the road is less, so the car is more unstable than it would normally be.
Pedro, determined to put in a good performance after his retirement from the Austrian Grand Prix, has had a better session than Jos.
So we can run to the end, Pedro.
I think Arrows now are solidly in the middle of the grid. We come to the race meetings now expecting to win the top 10, and we're disappointed when we're not in the top 10. So everyone's starting to believe in their ability, which is, it's half the battle.
Later in the day, heavy rain causes some unexpected problems. Despite the humour, a flooded garage is bad news. Millions of pounds worth of equipment is at risk, and work for tomorrow's practice and qualifying could be delayed. Formula One racing takes the fastest, most technically advanced cars in the world and teams them with the best drivers. But which counts for more, man or machine? If success was due to fitness alone, Arrows drivers Jos Verstappen and Pedro de la Rosa would be in the points every race.
They're very, very highly trained athletes. They're on full-time diets, they have physios, they have full-time trainers. They're physically incredibly fit, heartbeat 180 beats per minute for 2 hours. That's marathon-type cardiovascular capabilities.
And they have to be fit because accelerating and braking the way they do, their bodies take a pummeling.
You have so much grip because of the tires, the downforce, the grip level is so high that you can go into the corners really, really fast, which means that the lateral force is very high. So basically you end up having over 4 Gs on your body, and this means that your head wants to go to the outside of the corner, and then you have to keep your strength. Problem is you have to keep it for lots of corners, lots of laps, and then is when, after 1 lap, I think a normal person would lose his neck.
Forces of around 4 Gs are not unusual. That means instead of a head weighing 5 kilos, it can weigh more than 20. But physical fitness is only one component of driver ability.
Most of them have the same level of driving ability, and then it's the extra bits that you add on top, the fitness level, the intelligence level, racecraft, their psychology, how they work with other people, the organisation of their lives, really. It's not down to one pure thing of driving skill. They all have this driving skill, which is how they're able to take the vehicle around the circuit as quickly as they do. It's the other bits that they add into it, the human aspect.
If the drivers do have similar levels of driving ability, are races simply won by the best car?
I'd say very little is the driver. Very, very little. You put Schumacher in a Minardi, he would be 18th, 19th, 20th on the grid. Simple as that. He will not put it in 5th on the grid. The car is everything.
Of course, the car is vital, and the Arrows A21 is a great car. But maybe certain drivers perform better in specific cars. So is it the relationship between car and driver that's most important?
I think both the driver and the car form a balance, really. I think you need a good driver as much as you need a good car. Jos is quite a get hold of it and just drive it, yeah, and he drags the performance out of the car. Pedro is very, I think, probably a little bit more methodical and thinks about it a lot more. They complement each other quite well, really.
With all the advanced technology in Formula One racing, this human factor can never be forgotten.
The technology is incredibly advanced. I mean, there's telemetry, there's a lot of data acquisition systems, so basically the team knows everything. But at the end of the day, what the team doesn't know is the feeling, which tells how to improve the car, or what's the feeling on the driver, if we should go stiffer, softer springs, or that's a feeling that cannot be quantified.
Car or driver, man or machine, one of the oldest arguments in Formula One that may never be resolved.
I think the driver is a crucial aspect of the team. He's certainly not more important than the car, though. But the car is not an individual's effort, it's a team effort. Therefore, the driver is no more important than the team.
Helping the Arrows drivers to get the best from their cars is their chief mechanic, Stuart Cowie.
As a race team chief mechanic, I see my role sort of to coordinate the cars to make sure that they're all built to the same specification. The specification is up to date, so I have to liaise with the engineers and production to make sure we've got the bits that the engineers actually want and specify on the sheet. I started off in a different formula. I was doing sports cars. It was a bit unstable, so you weren't really sure whether you'd have a job over the winter. So I just wrote to a number of Formula One teams, and at the time Arrows wrote back and said they'd got a position, and I've been here ever since. We hate being at home for too long. We can't wait to get away. Of course, when we're away, we can't wait to get home. It is very close-knit, because obviously we live with each other. So you have to build up a good relationship with the other people about you. There's a lot of jobs where there's never really an end result. But with us, you can actually see something. You start at the beginning of the week with a pile of bits, you build them up, and you actually end up with something. And then trying to make it go quicker, you know, at the circuits, it is satisfying. A bad driver would never make the most of a really good car. If you put Shuey in a McLaren, he might as well give him the title now. Pedro's really proved himself this year, because I think in previous years he hasn't really had anybody that's going to push him. But this year, Jos has, I think, has brought the best out in Pedro. They've got to keep the momentum going. If you sit back and relax and say, you know, we've got a factory engine deal now, and, you know, this, that and the other, and everybody will stop pushing, they've got to keep pushing. I don't really see myself going a great deal further than I am now. I still like the contact with the cars. I still like getting my hands dirty now and again. So I don't really know. So I guess I'll just do this until they get tired of me.
Saturday, and the clouds look threatening at the German Grand Prix. Arrows are fitting the lighter, faster qualifying engine to the cars.
For qualifying, we go for what we think is the outright fastest configuration for the car. What we run in the race is more of a weighing up of the pros and cons, end of straight speed, how you can pass, tyre degradation, that sort of thing. So it's not as clear-cut for the race as what it usually is for qualifying.
Drivers are allowed a maximum of 12 laps at any time during the 1 hour session. With rain threatening, Pedro goes out within the first 5 minutes. Jos is ready to go too, but a damaged starter tube means the mechanics can't fire his car up.
Stuart, how long is it going to take to fix?
As expected, the rain starts. Jos now has to achieve a good qualifying time in the wet, but he still can't make it out of the garage.
We have to take the floor off.
Things have gone well for Pedro, though. He's gone straight into 5th place after just 1 lap. He now has to wait and see if any other drivers better his time.
The other end of the circuit is quite wet, Jos, so be careful.
Jos finally gets his car started and is trying hard for a fast time on an increasingly slippery track.
We'll turn you around straight away and get you out to do another lap. We are expecting more rain.
Too late, Chris. The rain's too heavy now.
Okay, let's download the car.
In spite of the difficulties, Jos ends up with a highly respectable 11th place on the grid. Pedro has held his 5th position. He's jubilant.
We had to, and that's it. Yeah? Well, I told you. You should have told me before. You know? I didn't realize you didn't know. Good, brother. I'm very pleased for the whole team, you know, for the whole team, because we've always been there, but we've never materialized what I mean, the potential of our team, so I'm pretty happy. I mean, we were a little bit lucky about the rain, but at the end of the day, we've been very unlucky in the past, so it's okay.
Pedro's manager is delighted. It's a performance that will put Pedro into the history books.
This is the best ever qualifying position for a Spanish driver in the history, since the Formula One was established in 1950. It pays off a little bit some disappointments of this season. It proves that Pedro's continuing, is moving up.
Pedro's result has delighted the team, but they also know Jos was capable of more.
We messed up with Jos's car with the starter motor, and if it hadn't been for that, then we'd had 2 of them up in the top 10. The car's been quick all weekend. I think it's good in race trim, so with a good grid position now, then she gives us a good chance in the race.
When it comes to flying to the European circuits from England, the Arrows Formula One team are fortunate. They have at their disposal their own luxury first-class jet. Not for them the hassles of check-in, queues, excess baggage and flight delays. Instead, a leisurely bus ride to Coventry Airport from their Oxfordshire base, and before they know it, they're bursting through the clouds on their way to yet another European racetrack, while tucking into a hearty breakfast and catching up on the latest Grand Prix gossip. And it's all thanks to Australian Paul Stoddard, owner of European Aviation, who provides this service for the Arrows team.
You, on a Grand Prix weekend, see many, many teams standing around airports waiting for hours and hours and hours for flights, and, you know, sadly, occasionally waiting overnight for flights when things go wrong. And they're, you know, able to sort of travel as a team, which is quite good in terms of building team spirit, because we see the good times and we see the bad times.
I find it's really comfortable, it's great, it's the only way to fly now.
You don't have to worry too much about missing the flight, which sometimes can be a problem with traffic at some of the Grand Prix.
Along with the race team, a regular passenger on the European Aviation flight is British F1 commentator Murray Walker.
You are travelling with one of the teams, which from my point of view is absolutely fantastic, because you're right in amongst them and you're into the Grand Prix weekend atmosphere from the moment they get on the plane at Coventry.
While the flight out is full of anticipation, the return flight gives Arrows a chance to relax.
It's more particularly interesting, I think, on the way home. You've had the trials and tribulations of the whole weekend, and there'll be, as I said, good or bad stories. People enjoy the trips home, and I think what we pride ourselves more than anything is getting the boys home in time to be able to see the highlights of the day replayed on TV.
On this particular flight, cabin crew member Francesca Bianco is leaving the airline. Only on a European aviation flight would she be given a send-off like this. Paul doesn't just have a passion for planes, he's also crazy about cars, and runs the Arrows Formula 3000 team.
We'd acquired the F3000 team in early '99, and through our first season had finished 12th in the championship, and we were looking to be affiliated with a Formula One team for a lot of reasons, but none the least being that Formula 3000 is viewed as junior Formula One, for want of a better word, and the only way to truly package that, I believe, is to be affiliated with an F1 team running predominantly in their colour scheme. And together we decided that we would go ahead with a fully liveried F3000 team, mirroring really its F1 brother.
And the little brother has had a great season, finishing third in the championship and winning at Silverstone.
If I could have picked just one race to win in the year, it would have been Silverstone, so that was a dream come true, and the smiles on all the boys and girls in Arrows, it sort of said it all, really, and that wasn't just a victory for us as European, it was a victory for Arrows as well.
But Paul's love of fast cars doesn't stop at F3000. Here, at his own factory at Ledbury in Gloucestershire, he has a personal collection of over 30 Formula One cars, which he started in 1996, including one driven by Arrows driver Jos Verstappen.
This is a 1997 025 Tyrrell, originally driven by Verstappen and Mika Salo. It's quite interesting because it was the last Tyrrell that ever scored any points, and it scored those famous 2 points for a 5th place in Monaco in '97. Sadly, Tyrrell were to finish racing in '98, and this actual chassis is the last one that scored points for what was a 30-year legend in Formula One.
But Paul's cars don't lie idle. He hires his cars out for film and television work and for racing in an historic Formula One championship. And the collection keeps growing.
We've obviously acquired cars from various teams we've been involved with, so I do have a bit of a habit of trying to hang on to at least one of each car that we've had an involvement with one way or another.
Perhaps in years to come, Paul will be lucky enough to add Jos or Pedro's A21 car to his collection. Sunday, and it's race day at the German Grand Prix. 9:30 a.m. and time for the Sunday morning warm-up.
Okay, Graham.
This 30-minute session is the last chance for teams to test the track conditions. The cars are run with full fuel in race trim for the first time. For Arrows, the session starts with a challenge. Jos has spun and collided with another car on his first lap. With the race starting in less than 4 hours, the mechanics are under pressure. Pedro is notching up some great lap times. He's running between 3rd and 5th fastest. But after hitting some debris on the track, Pedro's car is damaged. It's more work for the engineers, and they're really up against it. As the start nears, the team put on their flame-proof overalls, compulsory since a refueling accident in 1994 resulted in a fireball. Jos was in that car. He escaped unhurt.
Just came in for normal pit stops, and when they were refueling, there were some fuel split between the nozzle and the car, and that fuel came on the brakes, and that's why it was a big fire.
The drivers take to the grid. Jos is in the spare car, as the mechanics have not been able to repair his race car in time after his warm-up accident. He's 11th on the grid. Pedro is starting 5th, the team's highest place of the season. After some crowding on the first corner, Pedro moves into 4th and Jos into 8th place. After losing some bodywork from the car, Jos returns to the pits. Then he loses 7 places avoiding a spinning Williams, but a superb fight back sees him in 6th behind teammate Pedro. But just a few laps from the end of the race, he pushes too hard, spins, and is out of the running. Pedro's driving superbly, competing with the lead cars in the top 5 for most of the race. But a late spin in difficult conditions costs him a place on the podium. He finishes in 6th.
Finish 6th, Pedro.
It gives him a 2nd championship point, and the Arrows their 4th this season.
Very happy for the team. We worked very hard to get reliability good, and finally we have it. What a race, I mean, what can I say? You've seen it better than me.
Yeah, the car was reliable, and it's credit to everybody. The boys worked really well all weekend. All the stuff they did for qualifying on Saturday, changing engines and gearboxes, I mean, that all was fantastic. Did a really good job. Pit stops were really good. Can't ask any more of the boys, really.
In the next programme, their lives in your hands, putting together a Formula One car.
I always try and instill onto everybody's philosophy that this component is in your car and you're going around the circuit at that sort of speed. You have to look at it, that people's lives rely on that.
And F1 fashions how merchandising helps the Arrows on the track.
About 9% of the retail value of all our merchandise will be profit. And that 9% will go into helping the race team perform better.